Do you consider a house to be an investment?
Not an investment. Investment, I would say it's a consumption good. It's a mix, I guess. When you buy a house, you're buying, you're consuming part of it, but you're also investing some of your money in a real estate asset. So it's a combination. I think the big benefit of buying a home is that it provides a hedge to the cost of living in that specific home. Say you to live in a very specific area that you want to stay in. If the cost of living in that area go up, rents are going to go up a whole bunch. But the other thing that's going to happen is that real estate prices are probably going to go up. And so if you own a house, you're hedged. Housing costs went up in that area, but so did the price of your assets, so you're protected. Whereas a renter might get priced out of their home. That to me is the best argument for owning.
It's like insurance, almost.
Yeah, it's kind of like insurance. It's like there's a really cool paper that asks that question: why do people invest so much of their net worth in their home? And they come to the answer that it's because it behaves like a long-term bond that's perfectly indexed to the costs of living in that specific home, which is a pretty cool way to frame it. Now, I think that the other side of that argument is that just like a long-term bond, well, it might produce coupon payments that meet your cash flow needs or whatever. In the interim, in the short term, it's going to be very volatile in price. Long-term bonds are super volatile. Individual home prices are also super volatile. And I think that leads into how long you want to stay in a place. If you want to stay in a place hypothetically forever and you want to make sure that you're not going to get priced out of that house, the only option is to buy. But if you might leave in 3 years between transaction costs and price risk, I think renting starts to become pretty appealing.
You have a very interesting equation. I've never heard this before that determines if you should rent or buy. Explain what this is and who should be using it.
I called it the 5% rule. That's what you're talking about. And it's not always 5%. Some people got mad about that. It's like, well, it should have been 6% or 4% or whatever. But I'll explain the premise and people can figure out what number makes sense for them. It's basically the idea that there are unrecoverable costs of owning a home. Just like rent is an unrecoverable cost. You rent a place for $3,000 a month, you pay the rent, you get a place to live, you have nothing left over. There's no residual value. When you own a home, people imagine that you buy this asset and it goes up in price and they don't account for all the costs that you incur to live there. And so I think you have to account for those to make the rent versus own comparison. And so I just thought about, okay, if we take the property taxes, which are an unrecoverable cost, you pay taxes to the municipality or whatever, and you get whatever, a nice city or whatever, but there's no residual value. You pay maintenance costs, which are just the costs of keeping the place running. Your video on your real estate returns and your kind of misadventures, if we can call them that in real estate. Maintenance costs was a huge part of that.
It was.
Where people just, they don't account for it. And it's all the little things. I thought you did such a good job in that video.
Thanks.
Because all those little things that add up to like, holy crap, I paid X number of dollars and spent X number of hours maintaining my house. So maintenance costs. And then the other big one that I think really gets ignored, and you talked about this implicitly in your video, Graham, is the opportunity cost of capital. If you have $100,000 of equity in a home, that's $100,000 that you could have had invested in the stock market. And that difference in expected returns between home equity and stock market appreciation is an opportunity cost. And then if you're using leverage, you also have the cost of interest. So you end up with a weighted average cost of capital, but whatever. And so you add all that up, and based on the numbers that I used in that video back then, I came up with 5% as a number. And all you do is you take that and you look at the amount of rent that you would be paying, and you compare that 5% of the value of a home that you would otherwise buy to the amount of rent. And if they're equal, you're financially indifferent, roughly, approximately. But it also shows you if owning is much more expensive. Maybe 5% of the property is whatever, $5,000 a month, but you could rent a similar place for $4,000 a month. And it's okay, renting's actually pretty cheap relative to buying this house. And it can tell you the other thing too, that maybe renting is more expensive. So it's rough, it's not perfect, but I mean, in analysis that I've done since then, it's actually pretty good.
So again, I think we're going back to the math versus behavior.
Yeah.
And I think there are also intangible benefits of owning a house that even for myself, I try to account for, because I put myself in the position where mathematically, I think it's better to rent right now. But then I think realistically, could I be happy renting a house? And I think for a home that you intend on keeping or staying in 10, 15 years, I don't know if you would be happy, or at least for myself, renting a home for that long and not being in control of that house and like what you do with it and the fixes and the, changing a bathroom. So where do you build in the intangible benefits?
I think a lot of what you just described is actually a trap that people don't account for. The perception that you have control and can do whatever you want, it seems really compelling. Listen, I've lived, like I'm in the middle of living this right now, where we bought a house 6 years ago. And ever since we moved in, we've been doing stuff like a bathroom, we had one wall in the house that was never finished when the house was built. It's in a room with a really, really high ceiling. And so we finished the wall, and on that wall, I put a full glass backboard basketball hoop because I was like, that'd be super cool. Like, we're doing this anyway. It's an extra, whatever, a few $1,000s to put that. I'm going to do it. And stuff like that's very fun. I would never be able to do that in a rental. And I can literally make myself breakfast and then go shoot hoops like right beside the kitchen, which is awesome. But every one of those little things is thousands of dollars of costs that I would not have incurred as a renter. So you can view that as awesome, or you can think about, are renters, are people who rent their homes any less happy than owners? When you look at the broad data, like I rented with my family, with a wife and kids for 6 years. We've now owned a home for 6 years. I don't think we're any happier as homeowners. Honestly, I think the added stress of home maintenance and managing all the renovation stuff we've been doing is probably a net negative relative to when we were renting. And landscaping, man, real estate better than I do. It's brutal. And then when you look at the data on this, and there have been studies in Canada and a few other countries that ask whether homeowners are happier than renters. There is one American study too that it was a sample of 600 women, I believe, specifically. But asking that question, are homeowners happier than renters? And the answer is generally no, when you look at a broad sample of data. And I mean, that lines up with my experience, so I believe it. It's good confirmation bias for me. So it's like, that should be an intangible. It seems like that's a great argument. You can do whatever you want with your house, but I really think it's a license to spend just ungodly amounts of money doing stuff that's not actually going to improve your life. And I say that as someone who's doing it right now.
Another thing that I'm curious about is I posted on Twitter and it got a lot of attention. I got 4 million views. I said, for those that have paid off their mortgage and own a home free and clear, do you have any regrets? Almost no one posted that they had regrets. There's a few people who had regrets that were very specific to paying off a mortgage that was sub 3%. But every single other person said that the freedom and the feeling they got by owning a home free and clear superseded anything else. And they said it was the best feeling in the world. What are your thoughts on that? If you have a cat, you know that keeping them healthy is a non-negotiable. And a big part of that really just comes down to diet. By choosing a quality cat food, you're buying more time with your cat and giving them a happier, healthier life.
That's exactly why we are so excited to partner with 𝗪𝗏s. 𝗪𝗏s is fresh, human-grade cat food that does so much more than just feed your cat. It helps them live a full, healthy life.
Not only is 𝗪𝗏s healthier for your cat, but it also noticeably improves their energy. In fact, 88% of cat parents say that after feeding 𝗪𝗏s, their cat is softer and shinier and has more energy to play.
𝗪𝗏s recipes are over 80% protein, which helps your cat build the muscle they need, and they never use fillers or artificial ingredients.
Personally, I found that finding the right cat food is really difficult because in my case, I have one cat that will literally eat anything. Like, you leave any morsel of food on the table, it just will eat it. The other cat's extremely picky, but with 𝗪𝗏s, they both enjoy it. It's the perfect fix.
If you're ready to find your forever cat food, 𝗪𝗏s is perfect for you, and for a limited time, because you're a nice coffee hour listener, you get 60% off your first order plus free shipping and free treats for life when you head to 𝗪𝗏s.com/iced. That's 60% off your first order plus free shipping and free treats for life when you head to 𝗪𝗏s.com/iced.
Thank you again to 𝗪𝗏s for sponsoring this podcast. What are your thoughts on that?
I've got a couple of great anecdotes that speak to this. So in Canada, we have to get Canadian for a second here for me to explain this.
Sure.
In Canada, when you take out a mortgage to buy a home, the interest is not tax deductible. But when you borrow money to invest in an asset that's expected to produce income, like stocks that pay dividends, the interest becomes deductible. And so sometimes we'll see a client who comes to us and they have $1 million in their portfolio, and they have a $500,000 mortgage that's just borrowed to purchase the house, non-tax deductible. And we'll say, hey, we could use some of your portfolio to pay off your mortgage. And then if you want to keep the mortgage, you can re-borrow, reinvest back in the portfolio. You end up in the exact same place, but your interest is now tax deductible. It's just smart financial planning if someone's in that situation. And I would say 95% of the time. There's one case where the person really did go through with it, but 95% of the time, they do step one. We sell some of the portfolio, we pay off the mortgage, and then we're like, okay, now we're going to go back to lender. We're going to reborrow and invest back in the stock market. And 95% of the time, the person is like, no, you know what? I actually feel really good having the house paid off. We're just not gonna reinvest in the market, which is fine. That's great. That was the right decision for them. But going through the actual process, at first it's, oh, this is a great idea. We're going to do it, and then they have a paid off house, and they have to make the decision to reborrow to invest, and they don't do it. So I think that speaks volumes to your question.
I wrestle with the exact same thing because I know at some point I want a house with more space. We have family to visit, with a bigger yard, things like this. And then I wonder, for that exact same purpose, is that the primary home deduction really is capped at $750,000. Everything else after that, there are ways of borrowing, but it seems like the best thing to do is if you have something relatively liquid, use that to buy the house and then pull a margin and then buy back the position that you had sold to buy the house. And I wrestle with the exact same thing: is would I do that regardless? Like, why am I not doing that now? Why didn't I do that 5 years ago? I think that lends itself to just the peace of mind that I've never really controlled for peace of mind until recently. That it just something clicked after dealing with all those rental properties where now I place a premium for just easy.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of psychological benefit to having a paid off house. I also don't think people on the other side of the argument, I don't think people fully understand the costs of having a paid for house. Almost every video that I make on renting versus owning, people will say, well, the math changes dramatically in favor of owning once your house is paid for, as if it's better to have a paid off house. It's actually way worse.
Yes.
When you look at the total cost of owning, including the opportunity cost of equity with a house that's been bought in cash or is fully owned otherwise, and you compare that to a renter, the fully paid for home is almost always going to look worse than renting and investing in the stock market. Mortgages bring owners onto the same level as renters. But if you have a paid for house, it's costing you far more, which is the cost of peace of mind. And there's nothing wrong with that.
At what point does optimization just become not worth it? And I'll give you an example, a personal example. I was looking at doing a box spread, but I have some tax-free muni bonds too. And so I was thinking, if I do the box spread, I can get a capital loss, and then I look at my after-tax return compared to what I'm earning from tax-free munis. And I'm doing all these mental calculations, and then I determined through Claude, analyzing every single aspect, that I would be saving 0.02% by doing all of these things. And I think the net amount was it was a negligible amount. I mean, it's the difference of, a few hours in the market up or down. That's really what it was. When can people take it too far?
So I think it's subjective. I think in that case, you've got to look at the amount of time that you spent doing it. But you've also got to look at how much you enjoyed spending that time. I think it's an interesting example because you might have really loved saying that you did a box spread.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something you could talk about in content or whatever. And maybe that's a reason that it doesn't matter so much. But if you account for the cost of your time in that scenario, you're maybe a net negative even. So I think people have to account for time, but it's also highly subjective just based on an individual's preferences. We've brought really good tax planning to some folks that work with us, and shown, you could save over your lifetime, whatever, hundreds of thousands of dollars in net present value of tax by doing this thing. And some people say that's great. I want to implement it. And some people say, you know what, for a few $100,000, it's just not worth the complexity in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's highly subjective. But I think in general, people do get bogged down in the details and try to optimize things when they should just be, as we talked about earlier, buying index funds and not worrying too much about it.
I have to say, though, for the few people who this applies to, this will save 5 people. Could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you're buying a primary residence and you have a few $1 million minimum in a brokerage that supports options, you buy a house, a primary residence with a box spread, and take a capital loss on it. It's not financial advice, but look into it. For the few people this applies to, it is mind-blowing. No one knows about it. It's very complicated to explain. It took me days to wrap my mind around how this thing works. It is incredible. It's like it's a superpower to be able to do that. You get borrowing right now, net after tax, high 3%. It's crazy. Fixed, interest only. It's incredible. But it applies to like 5 people watching, so I'll end it there.